throw down your hot dog and carefully extinguish that firework in your hand, because 7 classic Nintendo Entertainment System games were just added to the Nintendo Switch Online. I'm talking about Solar Jetman, Mach Rider, Golf, Donkey Kong Jr. Math, Urban Champion, The Mystery of Atlantis, and one of my favorites, Cobra Triangle. Yeah, that's a stacked lineup, but are any of these games actually worth playing? To answer that question, I decided to flip through the pages of Electronic Gaming Monthly, Computer and Video Games, GamePro, and more classic magazines to see what the critics said back when these games first came out. Get ready to fight both gravity and giant sea monsters in this exciting episode of the Nintendo Switch Online Review Crew. Long before Rare teamed up with Nintendo and Microsoft, they were known by an entirely different name: Ultimate Play the Game. While that name is a little clunky, the Stampers managed to put out a number of incredible games, including the 1983 classic Jetpack. This was later followed by a sequel called Solar Jetman, which led to the game that we're going to talk about today, Solar Jetman: Hunt for the Golden Warship. Released 7 years after Jetpack, this is a science fiction adventure that forces us to use the thruster and expert steering to overcome each planet's gravitational pull. There are different missions and enemies to shoot, along with wonderfully crafted stages that are both challenging and fair. Yeah, the gameplay takes a little getting used to, but once you got it down, Solar Jetman is a blast. Now, when it comes to the critics, the game was split into 2 different camps: those who loved Solar Jetman and those that thought it was just okay. Let's start with Electronic Gaming Monthly, which represented both sides of that divide. On one hand, you have Sushi X giving the game a 6 out of 10, arguing that Solar Jetman is an interesting game because it's so different from everything else. The gameplay is hard to get used to and will take some time to master the moves. The massive mazes are long and challenging, making this game even more difficult to master, but still fun. Steve, on the other hand, gave the game a 9 and called it excellent. Solar Jetman is one of the best original entries I've seen in a long time, taking the basic premise from the rarely seen coin-op Gravatar and bringing it to the Nintendo Entertainment System. Tradewest and company have done a fantastic job with the flying, collecting, shooting game with no equal. With the critics divided, Electronic Gaming Monthly gave Solar Jetman a score of 7.5 out of 10. You also saw a lower score at Nintendo Power, who gave the game a 3.8 out of 5. The usually enthusiastic GamePro went all the way down to a 3 out of 5, which is the lowest score that I could find. Solar Jetman is not as fast-paced as most NES games. You'll do more exploring and maneuvering than fighting aliens. But it's a lot of fun, and many of the worlds are expansive and maze-like. You'll take hours to explore them. With all the weapons to choose from and the different atmospheres to test your flying skills, Solar Jetman is a real blast. Now, on the flip side, we have the British press just gushing over Rare's latest game. Computer and Video Games went as high as a 94%, which also turns out to be the same score that Mean Machines gave it in their 3rd issue. Wow! The old Spectrum Jetman classics were good, but for sheer playability, fun, and excitement, Solar Jetman really stomps on them. The prospect of Gravatar-style gameplay with plenty of bolt-on weaponry makes it a totally fantastic game. The gravity alters on each world, and on some of the levels, simply keeping control of your ship is the greatest challenge. With a depth of gameplay second to none and amazing graphics and sound, Solar Jetman ranks as the greatest NES cartridge released this year. The highest score came from Nintendo Magazine System, who gave the game a 95%. The action is very similar to the old classic Gravatar, but there's much more to Solar Jetman as you explore a series of planets looking for pieces of the Golden Warship. The playability is superlative, the graphics are great, and the sound is similarly excellent. Put all these factors together, and you've got a simply brilliant Nintendo title that is an essential part of your collection. This is one of those times where everything is just split perfectly by geography, with the British press liking this much more than the Americans. Could it be that they liked this more because they had already played Jetpack and Lunar Jetman? Yeah, that is probably it. But I'd say that the game is still a lot of fun, even if you've never even heard of those classics. Give Solar Jetman a shot, but just be a little patient with the gameplay. You'll get it. One of the Nintendo Entertainment System's earliest racing games came with a secret. It was actually a shooter. Okay, maybe it's not a shoot 'em up in the traditional sense, but what at first looks like a straightforward racer ends up actually being an action game hybrid, or along the lines of something like Spy Hunter or Road Blasters. While I personally think that this makes the game a lot more fun to go back to, you can also understand how some might be disappointed that this isn't a straight-up motorcycle racing game like Sega's Hang On. Let's see which side of the divide the critics landed on when they reviewed this NES classic. As you might have already guessed, the critics were a little mixed on Mach Rider. Computer and Video Games gave the racer a score of 58%, explaining that having seen Mach Rider screenshots, I was looking forward to playing this. But unfortunately, I found myself coming away disappointed. The 3D effects are fast, but the road moves quite jerkily and the motorbike controls don't feel particularly good. The graphics are quite garish too, although the sprites are solid looking. The 3 modes of play is a good idea, but unfortunately the endurance and solo options are a letdown by being too easy, allowing a novice to get far into the game with little practice. Fighting, on the other hand, is very tough, almost to the point of being off-putting. The difficulty levels just haven't been balanced very well. The gameplay is fun for a while, but doesn't hold your attention long enough. Now, believe it or not, CVG's 58% is actually right in the middle of the pack. Nintendo Magazine System legitimately hated the game, giving it an extremely low 36%. This is an early Road Blasters clone in which you have to drive your motorcycle down numerous stretches of highway, zapping any of the other aggressive drivers who get in your way. The official NES Road Blasters conversion isn't really up to much, but this lookalike is even worse. The graphics are laughable and the gameplay extremely dull. Leave this well alone. When it comes to Mach Rider's highest score, it looks a lot better than it actually is. Ace gave it a score of 636 because they were the one magazine that wasn't going to settle for a 10 or even a 100 point scale. They were going to go all the way up to 1,000. Once you get over the initial embarrassment caused by crashing into everything, precise control comes easily, and this is due to a certain amount of help from the computer. It leans you into the bends and doesn't overreact when you do. It may not sustain interest after you get well up into the levels, but designing your own tracks will take up time in the future. Well, there's definitely a lot to like about Mach Rider. There's no question that it feels incredibly dated. This is the kind of game that you play for a little while and then just never play again. Golf on the Nintendo Entertainment System is, well, it's golf on the Nintendo Entertainment System. It is a simple, bare-bones simulator that was an early sports game for the 8-bit system. But, from a historical perspective, golf is more than just that. After companies had spent years trying and failing to find the right interface for golf, Nintendo came along and changed the look and feel of the video game sport. For years to come, companies like SNK and Electronic Arts used this NES golf game as a template. Yes, it's simple and barely has any content, but it's also fun and extremely influential. The reviews largely reflect that importance. The lowest score I could find came from Nintendo Magazine System, which went with a still respectable 76%. As far as golf games go, this Nintendo effort offers no surprise. Simply take your golfer around the video course, select your club, judge your shot, and try to hole the ball. The graphics and sound aren't exactly spectacular, but this cart offers a very challenging, playable round of golf, recommended to golfing fans. Computer and video games like the sports sim a bit more, giving it an 80%. If you're just after a good time, golf will probably be enough. But if you want a no-holds-barred simulation, you'll have to check out the Commodore or Spectrum computers. Wind variance and weather just aren't in this Nintendo game. Yeah, don't act too surprised that the British press preferred the computer games to the Nintendo Entertainment System, because that's just kinda their thing. Well, this game is definitely fun and influential. There really are just a whole lot of other golf games on the Switch, so you may find that this 1985 classic doesn't get as much love as NES Open Tournament Golf or even Mario Golf. Before we talk about Cobra Triangle, let's first take a look at a couple of the early Nintendo Entertainment System games that were not reviewed by classic magazines. First up is Donkey Kong Jr. Math, an educational game that uses Donkey Kong Jr. to teach kids how to add and subtract. On one hand, it's an interesting relic from the past that sees Nintendo testing the waters and using video game technology as a teaching tool. That's something that we would certainly see more of in the 8 and 16-bit generations, though not necessarily from Nintendo. As an actual game, this one's a little hard to go back to as an adult for obvious reasons. And with the real and far more entertaining Donkey Kong Jr. already on the Switch, I just can't imagine that this math alternative will get a whole lot of play. You have to hand it to Nintendo for getting into the fighting genre early. First released in Japan in 1984, this early one-on-one Street Fighter looks like a prototype of what Capcom would do just a few years later. Unfortunately, while a lot of the ideas are in place, Urban Champion is a flawed fighter that is just no fun to go back to. It's a game that Nintendo has re-released at least a dozen times already. And every single time I'm struck by just how boring it is. This is a fighting game. Where's the excitement? Sadly, there are no magazine reviews for Urban Champion. We did review it on the Defunct Games website back in 2009. We gave it a D-. One of the more interesting games we're getting this week is the Mystery of Atlantis, or as they call it in Japan, Atlantis no Nazo. This is one of those rare gems that never made its way to the United States or Europe, which is the reason that there aren't any reviews. It's a side-scrolling platformer starring an amateur adventurer named Win who's on a mission to save his kidnapped master. At the time, Sunsoft hoped that the Mystery of Atlantis would beat the almighty Super Mario Bros., even using a slogan that just flat-out brags that the game surpasses Super Mario. I'm not sure I'd go that far, but the Mystery of Atlantis is a fun trip back to a game that we never got in the West. Who knows, maybe you'll agree that it truly is the game that surpassed Super Mario. Sure, Battletoads is great, and I'm not gonna say no to Perfect Dark. But for my money, Cobra Triangle is the best game Rare ever made. It's more than just RC Pro-Am with boats, because this cleverly designed game mixes the best elements of racing and action, giving us one of the most unique games on the Nintendo Entertainment System. From running missions, to shooting down foes on the high seas, to literally fighting sea monsters, this early vehicular combat game has it all. With 25 stages, fun boss fights, and a wide variety of missions, there's just nothing like Cobra Triangle on the Nintendo Entertainment System, or just any system for that matter. Now, while some of the critics weren't as enthusiastic as me, the fact still remains that everybody liked Cobra Triangle. Nintendo Power gave the game a 4 out of 5, which is one of the game's lower scores, but it actually tied as Nintendo Power's 8th best-reviewed game of 1989. Sadly, this is a time when Nintendo Power wasn't exactly writing critical reviews, so instead let's turn to the Games Machine, who gave the game the exact same score. You can tell that Cobra Triangle came from the people that brought you RC Pro-Am because the same graphical style is evidence. There are only 8 levels to play, but every one is tougher than the last. Perhaps the most frustrating is the jump the waterfall section, but patience reaps rewards, as always. Sure, those reviews are good, but nothing compared to the 93% handed down from computer and video games. They absolutely loved the game, noting that Cobra Triangle was programmed by Rare, better known to computer game players as the legendary Ultimate Play the Game. And like their older games, this is utterly superb. The graphics are amazing, with smooth scrolling and utterly convincing sprites. But it's the playability that makes Cobra Triangle one of the best Nintendo games around. It's incredibly addictive, and once you start playing, it's really difficult to tear yourself away. Put it on the top of your shopping list. Now, if you're looking for a higher score, then look no further than Nintendo Magazine System, which went all the way up to a 94%. Take the wheel of your speedboat and race your way through 25 races of isometric 3D scrolling fun, each with a different challenge. Cobra Triangle has it all. Great graphics, decent sound, but above all, amazing playability. Another classic from Rare that deserves to end up in your collection. Look, even if you disagree with me that Cobra Triangle is the best game that Rare ever made, it's still a classic that is well worth playing. There just aren't a lot of games like it, not on the Switch or really anywhere. It's a great addition. Hey, thanks for watching me break down these classic reviews. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post episodes just like this whenever Nintendo adds old school games to their online service. We have a whole playlist with literally every Nintendo Switch Online game covered. Give it a binge when you have a few minutes to spare. Now, here's the question I have for you. What's your favorite Rare game? Look, I already said that mine is Cobra Triangle, but where do you come down? Are you partial to Battletoads? GoldenEye? Grabbed by the Ghoulies? Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back tomorrow with a Nintendo Switch Online report card looking at the first half of 2024. I was going to post it earlier in the week, but I just kept adding to it. Now we have even more information about how the rest of 2024 is going to go. So I really am excited to unveil all the numbers and all the charts tomorrow. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,